So in order to update a product, first let's view what we want to update. So this application is more or less like a human resource application. So what it is dealing with is just human resources, and with human resources you have list of employers or employees, people that are in the company. So the first thing is, let's take a view at what we actually want to do. So all we have is a list of employees. Okay. Now we have this list. However, we want to make a change. So it will only be reasonable to have a link that is able to, you can click on to edit that particular stuff. So the first thing we need to do is to go. You have let's look into the URLs, where you see manage user view. So if we look into the URLs, our first point of call will be the main HR app, where we're going to check the general URL for which URL to edit. So here you see the manage user, so we know to go into the manage user URLs. When you get into the manage user URLs, we know that this is the manage user URLs. The particular entity we're dealing with currently, the link we're dealing with currently is view. So if we look at it, we'll see that this is view, and the code is view employee. And so we will need to go into the views to check that view employee to know which HTML to edit, and that's view employee.html. So what I'll do is I'll move out of here a bit, go back in there and check for templates, manage user, view employee, this one. So this is the one I would need to implement the first code that would support what I want to do. So the first thing I want to put here is edit employee. Edit employee. So that is the code that will be there. Now one of the key things I need to also do is to make sure that there is an href that can handle that. Href being equals to, so here what we're going to have here is when you click on this, it will send us to a page that we can edit the employee. So what we want to put here is edit or update. So it can either be edit or update. Edit, so just say edit. Edit underscore employee. That's the first thing. The second thing is I will pass a value here which represents the ID of the employee. This represents the ID of the employee by putting ID here. So with this code, I have a functional link that I can use to edit. I can remove all this and just leave the remaining two. So after making that change, what I'll have here is edit employee and payroll. Those are the two things I'll have there. Of course, they're supposed to be one after the other. So but we'll leave that for later. So after creating this edit employee, I need to make sure that the link exists. So I come to my my URLs, and I need the edit employee link, and the edit employee link is equally going to receive a number, because if you look at this link, if I should open it, we will discover that I have manage user edit employee and there's a number at the back, and that number will be different for every staff. 7, while this one is 1. That's to show that I'm actually passing a unique ID through the URL. So for edit employee, in order to capture that URL, I would need to create a link, and that link is going to be the edit employee link. In that link, I need to make sure that I'm going to call it edit employee, and then it's going to take an EMP underscore ID, that's the employee ID, and then I'm going to create a function here that I'm going to call edit employee, and then this link will be called edit employee. So with this little syntax we can save, and then next thing, now we'll have an error because there is no edit employee. I need to go into my views and create an edit employee set of codes. So what I'll do here is just duplicate what is there and call this edit employee, and then I will pass a second parameter here called EMP underscore ID, which, if you remember, is also the same configuration EMP underscore ID that is here. So that is an instant variable that is generated in the process of the link, and then the link will receive that value. So the first thing we're going to do is edit employee. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove this from here and simply extract what is here. Remove this. These are just parameters that I'm going to put in my value. So here you're going to have something like this, data. I'm going to take this, put it up here, and then put this. So no big deal there, I'm just editing the data I'm going to pass into the title, and then this one is not necessary. So I'm just editing the data that will go into the HTML first time. So I need the HTML that will allow edit employee. So I'm going to just change this to what? Edit employee. The only thing you will see in the edit employee is a form. So you have edit employee, you have data, okay, and one last thing, you have the count. We're going to remove this. Then we're going to come up here, just come like this. Alright, so this is the EMP. So the first thing I need to do is to go into the employee and get the data. I need to go into the employee and get the data of that individual. So I'll simply pass this value from here and say ID equals to this value, and this will not be all. This will now be get. So let me take your reference to one of the notes that we have on this, where I talked about database query. So in the database query, I have a model DB query where I explained how to extract information from the database using models. So in one of these examples, I specify that you can use get or create method. You can use this update or create, but when it comes to extracting, for example, viewing the products or viewing data from database or getting data from database, any one of these, all of them fall into the same category. So one of the things is you have this method and it tells you that a query set is retrieved. That's all. But there is another one, filter, that allows you to select by key value pairs, where you can say that you want columns. There is also another method that says with specific extractor. So this one is going to get this data, this particular data is what it's going to get, and you will notice that it's going to return a query set. So I did an example here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this example now. So I'll simply get back into my, let me save that. So in here what we have is this, the get ID is equal to this, and then we have a value here that we'll call employee. So this is going to get a specific employee, and we can also print the value of the employee to see that we have a particular employee details. So edit employee is actually a form, and when we go into the templates, we need to have edit employee. In order to create edit employee, I'm simply going to say how are you? Good morning. So here is the file, edit employee. What do we have inside edit employee? When we look inside, we'll see that the only thing present here is a form, alright, which is the only thing present here. And then in this location, I'll simply say edit employee, edit employee. So that's the form that we're going to see inside here. Alright, so now that that is set, the next thing we need to look at is, let's first take a look at our view. So here, if we were to look at this link, what we're going to see here is we need to pass the form here. So let's say form. Okay, we don't have a form yet. Form, and then employee EMP form. So that's what we're going to pass there, and then we'll pass that to data. So secondly, we need a form. In order to use the employee form, we simply need to get the form. So here I already have the basic form, and this form it allows you to also receive a file. That's why you have the class having the request for form. So here is a form. Okay, this form can take data, and this form can take files. So you can upload files here. So in this case, this form that we're seeing is not making any inquiry here. So I'm going to just duplicate it and hashtag the one we don't need out for now. In this other point, I'm going to simply type instance is equal to employee. So what I'm simply doing is I'm initializing the form with data from employee record. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so let's see what it looks like for now. Let's call this EMP form. So to test our link, we need to edit employee URLs, edit employee. So this is the link that we need to have. Now let's check if the link is correct, and that will be inside the views. So inside the view employee, you need to check if that link is correct. Okay, it's correct. Alright, so let's check our service. Name is not name. Edit employee is not defined. That's okay. This edit employee. Let's Ctrl C there, and let's run that again. Okay, still not seeing edit employee. That error is coming from my URLs. So what I need to do, I need to go into my URLs. Edit employee. So here I will just change this and simply say from views I want you to import everything. Alright, so let's try this again. So data is not defined, and that is in my sorry. Okay, so let's get back into that. Let's go back to the view. So data is supposed to be a dictionary. Alright. D title. D title. So if you look at it, you see that the form contains the information of the staff that you want to edit employee or post edit. So post this, so I can make changes here. Let's call it Sukomi updated. So I'm making that change to the name. Alright, now that we've done that, we're going to look at a very of course, if we look into the backend, we'll see the result of this print, but let's leave that out of it. Alright, now that we've done that, the next thing we need to do is, you will recall that this form is going to be submitted. It's going to be submitted, post edit. Alright, so because the form is going to be submitted, in our views we need to initiate setting structures. Alright, so let's use, there are two ways to go in about this. So let's use the first method and then we'll look at the second method. So here we're going to import this get object or 404. So this is the first method, and all I have to do is just put it here. Or let me just so that we have that. What else? Nothing else there. The second thing we need to do, we're going to use this get object to make our query. You remember that here I made my first query using edit employee. You see, I made my query here, employee. This is what I did the first time. Okay, so I'm going to use this method as opposed to that method. Still the same, it's still the same thing, still the same process. So it's not like there's really a difference between them. Or can you spot any difference? Can you spot any difference? Alright, so if you didn't spot the difference, let me show you what the difference is. This is a function as opposed to this method that I use. This is a query, a direct query to the database. But this is a function, is an inbuilt function. Second thing is that it takes two parameters. So if you notice up here, we have imported into this field. Good morning. Yeah, we just have two more topics to cover. If we're fast, we can cover two of them today. So if you look at this now, what do we see? We see the first line, and then you look at the second line. You can see that there's actually the only difference between them is that this is a singular function. Of course, it has some other properties. The next line says that this is the form, and the request goes in this manner: request.post, just like the normal form, or none, but initiates with object, where object is the same thing as our database query. So instead of this that I used here, okay, I will simply use this method. So instead of form, that would be what? emp form. So let's remove this two, and so you can see the lines we need, just 1 and 2. And here is the instance. Instead of this instance, I'm using this instance where the value is object, which is the object I got from here. So the syntax is still the same thing. I'm just changing the functions I'm using. Remember that this is the first method of updating. There's still a second method. Alright, now the key areas are this. So here, okay, here we have this line that says commit is false, form.save commit is false. So this is where the actual activity for the update is going to occur. Remember that in our form, in this the Django queries, whenever you make so let's quickly go through this. So we have viewing product or getting data from the database. Okay, and this line is extracting data from the database. These are simple extraction lines, okay, which we're looking at. But there are some lines that don't just do extraction. They actually allow you to make an update. So at the beginning, we looked at a particular method called create or get or update, create or update. So let's quickly look at that. So you have this method and you have this method. So what these two methods do is that they simply, if that record doesn't exist, they create it. So they are used for new records. So when you run a query, one of the most important things you do is you run this last command that is called save. Whenever you run a query, you run this save, and you will see that this save is saving an instance of this element, where this element or object is the query that we got from the database. So save is a parameter that actually confirms what was passed. So in this sample here, we also have the save function. So if you look at it, you see the save function. So once we get this, this is going to make the necessary changes, and then we'll run our save. Alright, so we're gonna run this now. Let me just put that. And also in this my form, I'm using the following. I'm using else, but like I mentioned, you don't need to use else. So where is the form? emp form. So the first thing we're going to do is to check if the emp was posted. So it is if So I have to check if there was a post. That's the first thing. Remember, this form has been generated with this instance. So I have to check if the method was posted. Okay. We're also to check if the posted method, this one, is valid. If dot is underscore valid. So it's after these checks have been done, we will now initiate this. Of course, here I didn't do all that. I just made a condition here. here there's a condition at the top here, but don't worry about that, it's still the same sequence. So once we have this, the next thing we need to do is to what? Run these two lines. So that object is going to be received from the form.save instead of just form.save that we do in the regular creation. Is going to receive commit is false. So that form, in our own case, the form is this is the form. We want to save the form, and then we said commit is false. After that, so this one is what came in from here, which has been validated and is now being used to create an object, and then you say object dot save. Okay, so after we've done this, maybe we want to redirect, okay, to the maybe we want to redirect back here, this view. So it's going to be manage user view. Don't forget the slash at the front here, and this is going to be what? Return redirect. So this is an if statement. It will only execute if this condition is met. So everything under the if can only happen if the condition is met. If the condition is not met, this one at the top will still happen, and this one will still happen, but this is the return that we're going to get. Alright, so let's look at this again and see. Hopefully we're able to perform this. So let's check. The first person there is Sukomi. Alright, so okay, where is this? In my views. There's no post in my views. Oh, this one. This is the error, post. So actually it's not supposed to be post, it's supposed to be employee. Now for me to have employee, which is supposed to be the model, I need to import from models. I need to have this employee. Alright, so that's the model that I'm going to be working with. Let's try that again. Create form. Alright, so this is supposed to be our form, our employee form. Okay, so let me look for my employee form. This is my employee form. Make employee. View, edit, make employee. So the person's name is Sukomi. I'm just going to say Sukomi. Okay, let me use let me use Yemi Ayodele. So maybe this person got married and became Yemi file share, or let's say it became ni yemi. Let's just say this is the former name, and then we can just put ni Jesu share. So you can see we have all this, so let's just edit. Alright, so name false is not defined. Okay, let me see where that came from. Here, commit is false. This is where it came from. Alright, this place, false. So maybe it's saying that as a value. So if you notice here, that we have updated the information about this person. So that's just how you do your update. So that is one way to doing the update. So you can change everything you want to change there and realize. So it's in a simple, the lines are very simple. The most important thing is that just import this. Make sure you have the module imported, and make sure you have the necessary forms imported, and then apply them. It's just the same way that we did what we did. So that's basically how you update data in the Django. So if it's a product, that's how you will do it also. Alright, so that concludes database entry updates using custom made forms. Of course, you can go into the admin and make all those changes, but that will not work for third-party users. So a third-party user may come to his dashboard and want to update products or update certain details, and in that case, you will have to use this method. So the first thing to do is to simply create create a function that is going to receive the ID, and the ID will be generated from the view that renders the display of products. So when you click on edit products, it will pass the value into the URL in this manner. Let's look at this other one, Yemi. Maybe our name was changed. So if you notice edit employee, when you click on it, it brings a value here, 5. So you create a URL to handle that, and that URL will take a simple link and an integer value, which is the employee ID. This name that is here represents the type of value that you are passing to the type is going to be the name. Normally in your script you will have said employee ID is equal to integer, which is a number. But in this case, you are programming the link. So this link simply means that what you're expecting is an integer, and the name of the integer will be called employee_ID. So when the individual clicks on the link and this is passed into the URL, then the URL calls up this edit employee function. The edit employee function is located inside the views. It receives the ID and passes the ID and also the model to the get_object or 404 function. The function runs a query on the database and gets the employee whose ID is this, and then puts it in this object. Using the object, we now go ahead and initiate the form by saying instance is equal to that object. Once we do that, we now pass the form to the view here through the data dictionary, we pass the form here, and then the form loads in the view as editable form. The second thing we need to note is that if the form is submitted, then this set of codes will be executed. Okay. So this side will only execute when you submit. That's the only time this section will execute. So in the total cases, once you click on submit, this section will execute, and then the form will be updated. So that is how you update your data. So in this case now, I can change this to maybe Yemi Ayodele Alade, and maybe there was a change in their email. You can change it to yahoo.com. Yahoo.com, Yemi Ayodele, and that would be Alade, you know. So that's just a zip code, all these things. You can now just post it. So you see that the person has been updated, Yemi Ayodele Alade, with the new details. You can do, or you can change the picture. Everything you change will reflect there. So that is basically how you run data update on your database.